Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Moto, and Can-Am has released two motorcycles for the first time in many years, and they're both electric. This one here is the dual sport option, the Origin. They're also making the Pulse, which is more of a on-road city type riding motorcycle. It comes with their own proprietary electric motor and a battery that's built into the frame. This one right here, as you're seeing it, being the more off-road oriented model, coming in at about 413 pounds. It makes fairly low horsepower numbers, 47 peak, I think it's 27 continuous, but the torque figure is pretty substantial. I actually don't have it right here in front of me. I'll have it up on the screen, but you can still get the front wheel up plenty fine at lower speeds, so that seems to be quite enough torque for me in order to have fun with this bike. The sticker price is around $15,000, but Can-Am has given you a healthy amount of rebates on it already. I don't know if that's going to change once federal tax credits change around. It's currently September right now, so I don't know how that's going to change here pretty soon. They estimate that mixed riding range is somewhere around 70 miles. Now, I know plenty of people are going to come in right away and say, how in the world could you sell an adventure motorcycle that can only go about 70 miles? And let me just tell you, I agree with you. I like to do big mile rides away from any level 2 chargers, so I probably wouldn't be the target demographic for this motorcycle. However, this is not the full ride review. This is not a video where I tell you whether you should or should not buy this motorcycle. This is the Commuter MPG test, which means we're going to go out and test how efficient this bike is and talk about what it would be like to use it as a daily commuter style motorcycle, which means taking it into the office, taking it into class, anything where you're riding regularly in real world sort of environments. And you got to be honest that there are plenty of people who don't put big miles on their bikes. They buy motorcycles and they just ride them occasionally, or they ride them in the evening from time to time in the weekends, or they ride them in and back from work, but they don't ever go on any big long rides. So it's incredibly possible that you could use the link systems right here. You could get some bags on the sides, you could wear a backpack or something, and you could ride this as sort of a daily rider kind of bike. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. We can save the criticisms in price and range when it comes to the actual full review. However, we will be talking about range in general, so let's see what that actually comes out to here in the real world. So we're going to be heading out on our usual test route. Technically, we won't be starting from the gas station like we typically do, because I had it charged all the way up here at my house. So it'll be a little bit longer than our usual route, but I'm going to go out. I'm going to do about 43.5 miles of mixed riding. We're going to do some city, some highway, some 55-mile-an-hour roads, some spirited riding, but mostly as you might ride, just heading into the office on a given Wednesday. And then we're going to come back and charge the bike all the way back up on level 2 charging. We're going to see how much electricity it takes and get our final range figure after that. Now, a few other things to note. We do have our tire pressure set at their placard, 30 PSI rear, 24 PSI front. Now, if you were using this bike off-road regularly, you might have a little bit lower tire pressures than that. Speaking of that, we are clearly running some kind of dual sport oriented tires, so it is clear that something like the Can-Am Pulse with more street friendly tires would get better efficiency. There's no getting around that. This is also the 73 model, which is giving us the optional windscreen as well as some different graphics, so that will affect our aerodynamics slightly. Outside temperature today, about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so dealing with a little bit of heat. However, Can-Am has liquid cooling for their battery here, so that means theoretically battery should stay a little bit cooler, although I think that matters more for charging than it does for actual operation. So without any further ado, let's get this thing fired up and get rolling. We see this big old screen come to life. We'll talk about that some more when we're on the ride. We do have quite a few different ride modes here. We've got Off-Road Plus, Off-Road Sport, Normal, Rain, and Eco. We're going to do most of this test in Normal with some of the tests done in Sport. You don't actually get full power unless you're in Sport mode. I think that's a little disappointing. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we ride as well. Let's also make sure our trip is reset here. Reset trip B. There we go. And with that, let's head out. We do also have Apple CarPlay on this bike, but I have an Android phone. So I am apparently left out of the phone projection world here on the Can-Am Origin. We do also have Regen on this bike coming from the rear wheel. However, when your battery is charged all the way up as ours currently is, you don't get much regen. It's kind of like if you're familiar with electric cars, when there's not any extra space for electrons to go in the battery, then you can't really do much regenning now, can you? Now throughout this test, I'm going to be trying to stay within about 5 miles per hour of posted speed limits in order to be fair to the bike. Ooh, but it's a matter of catching this green. We'll speed up slightly. You know, something that people might not realize about adventure-style motorcycles is they make for fantastic commuters. You have a nice upright seating position, you have great visibility around traffic, and add a little wind protection in there, and this is just a good place to be. However, I will say that with this optional windscreen, and you veteran riders may be familiar with this, it's actually louder than if we didn't have a windscreen on it at all, because I'm getting a lot of dirty air funneled right at my helmet. So I'm hoping that you all are not going to have trouble hearing me throughout the faster sections of this ride, because there is quite a bit of dirty air. It's quieter if I were to just come up here. So I don't know. I mean, I might actually take the windscreen off of this bike for the rest of my time with it and see what it's like riding without, because if you don't get the 73 package, you don't get the windscreen anyway. And also, I assume most people aren't doing long rides on this, so why do you need a windshield? I don't know. The other strange aspect of the regenerative braking is that because it's only on the rear wheel, if you're decelerating quickly, that rear wheel can lose traction. And so if you're trying to apply a significant amount of braking force with that rear wheel and it doesn't have much traction, then it loses traction and then it can't regen as much. So you don't have a necessarily predictable amount of regen. It's just something you kind of have to keep an eye on. I'm glad they have regen, don't get me wrong. It's just if you're riding over rougher pavement or if you're on dirt or something, it's an inconsistent experience. You kind of have to experience it for yourself. But here we are, 2.5 miles in, and we've got 48 miles of range according to the bike's range meter. Now that is very biased toward how I've been riding the motorcycle, and that has been fast. So we'll see if by hanging out at posted speed limits around kind of urban county or suburban county, I should say, like Orange County here, we'll see if that figure sort of adapts to this current riding situation. Right now we're looking at 7 miles per kilowatt hour, and I looked up specs before I headed out of the bike here, but I forgot to look up total battery capacity. If I remember correctly, it's somewhere around 8 kilowatt hours. So that means we'd be looking at 56 miles on a full charge. That makes sense. Overall though, good amount of airflow on the bike. It's fairly narrow, looking down here at the kind of cockpit, if you will. So on a warmer day like today, I am getting a good amount of cooling, and it is nice that we have an outside temperature gauge. It's also just a very easy motorcycle to hop on and ride. If you're somebody using this regularly as a commuter, if you're coming in the morning or you're coming out after a long day of work, you might kind of appreciate just getting able to hop on and twist the wrist and head out rather than think about shifting. And I know, for many of you veterans, you're going to say, oh, I never have to think about shifting. Sure, but you're a veteran rider. If we care about the sport of motorcycling, we want as many people to be able to ride as possible. And if that means that there are certain people who wouldn't swing a leg over a 600cc motorcycle that they have to shift, but they would consider buying a $10,000 bike here that they don't have to shift and that they can charge at home, then hey, let them have it. You got to realize that $15,000 is not a lot of money to some people. So for those type of people, if they want this toy, then let them have it. Now, I know we keep going back to regen, but there are actually 2 types of regen that the Can-Am Origin has. There is what I like to call passive regen, where you just release the accelerator, leave it at a neutral position, and the bike applies a certain amount of regenerative braking to slow you down at probably about 1 or 0.1 G or so. And then there's active regen, where you can actually twist the throttle backward past neutral, and then it slows you down more dramatically, probably about up to 0.3 G or so. 0.3 G. Now, fortunately, Can-Am allows you to customize both of those regen amounts right here in the quick settings for both an off, a minimum, and a maximum. I will say that right now, both settings are at maximum, and with neutral regen being set at max, you kind of have to keep your hand on the accelerator more than you might want to, because if you release, it slows you down a lot. It's kind of like having a bike with a lot of engine braking and being in gear, not being able to pull in the clutch, if you will. So a lot of people I could see preferring a little bit more of a minimum. In fact, we get a good chance here. I'll switch the regen over to minimum and we'll see how that is riding around. But depending on your riding style, having more regen is going to be technically more efficient, because right now the bike is conserving energy, putting it back into my battery. Then again, if you really want to get pedantic, the most efficient way to ride would be with no regen until you need to come to a stop, because technically regeneration is not 100% efficient. So really I should be coasting with no application of the electric motor in either direction until I need to stop, and then applying regenerative braking at that point. But efficiency is all a trade-off game, and for me, I would like to trade off the convenience of having the bike slow itself down a little bit on its own. If you're in an area where you can lane filter, the origin is not super wide as dual sports go, so you can kind of walk it through, and having that very predictable electric throttle. I guess it's not technically a throttle, is it? It's just an accelerator. Makes it very easy, and then if you get a situation like that, boom, out you squirt. Cloudy day here on PCH. Still a very iconic view, but a little bit cooler, a little bit darker, some might want. However, the marine layer is slowly cooking off. You can see the blue out to the left. We'll be there in a few hours. I will say, though, the bars are wider than you might be comfortable with a lot of lane splitting. This is a very ideal situation to be on an electric motorcycle. Again, with the dual sport aspect, you have the visibility and the bump absorption. You can see around, you're very upright. But then with the electric, you got stop and go. Don't have to worry about clutching, shifting, anything like that. You've got that immediate torque to zip around. Very nice. And you're quiet too. If you're somebody who doesn't like throwing loud aftermarket pipes on your bike, and you like to be a little bit more considerate in a city environment like this, you got it. 3rd Street hill test should be no problem for all this electric torque. Yeah. Motoring right up with ease. Probably doing a little bit better than this Prius Prime in front of us. For the spirited ride section, we are actually going to pull off for a quick moment, not necessarily just to change the ride mode, but also to give us a little bit of gap, because once we unleash all 47 horsepower, we are going to make up some ground on this CR-V quite quickly. But we do have sport mode on now. I'm going to leave traction control on. However, this bike is an absolute wheelie machine with traction control off. So it's very fun, but for this sort of riding, I'm going to leave it on. We are at 8 miles per kilowatt hour. I did see us kiss 9 there briefly in town, but as we've started to gain some elevation, we're back to 8. We'll see if we drop down to 7. Now, I will say those are pretty wide figures between the miles per kilowatt hour. I'd really like to see a 10th place in there at least. All right, here we go. Woo! Sure picks up speed nicely. Even with these dual sport oriented tires, you can get quite a bit of traction. A lot of ground clearance, so don't really have to worry about scraping peg. Yeah. Doesn't have quite the push out of the corner at these speeds that you might want from a high performance bike, but if you're somebody looking for more of an adventure kind of experience, it's all there. So after going all the way up the hill and coming back down using Regen, we are back up to 9 miles per kilowatt hour. Pretty cool how that works. Getting ready to wrap up our slower city speed section of the ride. 9 miles per kilowatt hour. A lot better than our average we were doing before. And looking at our range-o-meter, looking at how many bars are there total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 bars. We're 7 out of 10 bars. Somewhere around 70% state of charge, and we've completed about 25 miles. Can we get that thing away? Still don't see a full percentage. That's a little unfortunate, but if we bring up the charging screen, do we get that? Let's see. We can't see the energy screen while the bike is on. Okay. But this section is gaining elevation, and it's more 50 to 60 mile per hour speeds, and then we get to the highway section. So suspect that figure to go down a little bit, but not too bad so far. About 50 minutes into the ride, comfort's pretty good. It's a fairly narrow seat, fairly off-road bike oriented in that regard. So some people might find that a bit uncomfortable at this point. I'm still pretty good. My little butt bones are kind of situated on it. It's got a good amount of squish, so a nice amount of support there. And again, the ergonomics nice and upright, so comfort is good so far for my 5'10", 32-inch inseam body. Well, we even made it through that section with still sticking at 9 miles per kilowatt hour. So it's just up to the highway where I have seen this bike get down around 5 or 6 miles per kilowatt hour when cruising at 70. And we're not going to take it any easier with this one. Sticking to testing protocol, get up the highway speeds, and I'm actually going to switch into sport mode for the highway as well, because I want to have all my power available to me if I need to kind of slip around any sort of cars. Now, hopefully y'all will be able to hear me okay. Like I said, we do have a lot of dirty air, so I'll give a little recap at the end of the highway section in case the audio is unusable. But obviously still good visibility and good power to get right up to 70 quickly as you need. The bike does top out governed at about 79, 80 miles per hour or so. So if you're a real fast boy or you live around Dallas, Texas and everybody's going 80, then something to keep in mind. But cruising around 70 is no problem for this bike. We have just ticked down about way through our battery as well, having done about 30 miles. So if you are not doing highway riding, you'll be able to see 60 miles out of a charge on this bike. Now we've managed to keep into 8 miles per kilowatt hour. Didn't quite dip down to 7, but we have ticked down to about 30% state of charge according to our bars. And for the first time in the ride, I've seen the battery temperature click up above half as well. It's up to 84 degrees ambient, running 70 miles per hour or so. Seems to have put a little extra strain. I don't know how much cooling there is kind of from the air coming in, but we've got fans on here as well, and there's liquid cooling too, so I just don't know how much airflow actually hits the radiator in the front. But other than how much energy it uses, it's a good place to be on the highway. You've got the grunt to get around as long as you're okay doing about 70 miles per hour as opposed to too much more than that. You've got the visibility, you've got the comfort, wind protection's fine enough. I mean, it's an adventure bike, and adventure bikes make for good highway running as well. Oh, interesting though, we do not have full power anymore, even here in sport mode. Maybe it's because of state of charge, but yeah, we don't have full twist anymore. Okay, now that I'm slowing down, now I've got full power. Is it a heat issue? I don't know. The little power meter is slowly working its way back up. Now it's at full. So do we actually have a seating problem. Maybe now that we're getting lower, I'm not quite sure what that is, but interesting nonetheless. But we are wrapping up our test here, and after 44 miles, I think that's actually a little bit high. I think we've only done about 43, and over an hour of riding. This is a good little bike. I mean, it is. And if you are somebody who wants to use it daily for a ride like this, I mean, there's 44 miles and plenty of charge still to get home, depending on, you know, how far away your home is. But if you're riding 50 miles or less, or maybe you can charge at work or something, it's a good bike for it. You've got the technology, especially if you want CarPlay coming up or something like that. You can control your Bluetooth right here, change tracks. Seat comfort, like I said, squishy enough. I'm starting to get a little sore now, but most bikes, I'm ready to kind of shake it up after an hour and a half. Yeah, you get used to the regen. That part of it's pretty good. But ultimately, we're here to measure efficiency, so I need to charge it back up, get it to full, and then wrap up my final thoughts with you here on commuting with the Can-Am Origin. As I said, the bike does have liquid cooling, so that does enable it to charge quickly, even when it's freshly used like this. Okay, we were all the way down to 23% state of charge, 14 miles left. And on my level 2 charger, once we have it, it's saying an hour and a half all the way to 100%, but it's going to get to 80% a good bit faster than that. For those of you who aren't familiar, charging up to 80 with an electric vehicle is the fastest charging speed, and then it really tapers off from there. So I'm sure in only about 40 minutes or so we'll be to 80%, and that last bit will take about the next half. So I'm going to go in, use the restroom, get cleaned up, and then we'll come back out and crunch our final thoughts. Back and all charged up here with the Can-Am Origin. Didn't take too long to charge up on my level 2 charger. Even if you were charging this up at level 1, just a standard wall style plug in your garage, you'd be able to have a full charge in, they say, about 6 hours. So, you know, all night, no problem if you're commuting on the bike. Our charger reported 6.5 kilowatts that went back into the battery. Now, typically we estimate about a 90% charging efficiency when charging on level 2. Now, it's hard to know for sure. Some places will put closer to 95, but we kind of go 90%, assuming that much charge actually went into the battery, as opposed to like running the fan, the liquid cooling, the electronics, etc. So if we take that 6.5 kilowatt hours that was left from the charger and multiply it by 0.9, we get 5.85 kilowatt hours that we assume actually made it back into the pack here. And we take that 43.5 miles traveled and then divide that by 5.85 kilowatt hours, then that gives us just over 7 miles per kilowatt hour, technically 7.4 miles per kilowatt hour here on the Can-Am Origin in all sorts of mixed riding. And that does line up with what the bike has been telling me, both for this ride and as I've been riding it. Now, I think it technically said 8 miles per kilowatt hour. I don't know if it's rounding. If it hits 7.5, then does it technically round up to 8? That's probably the case, I would think, considering it's going with whole integers. So I think a pretty safe number for mixed riding is going to be right around that 7.5 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, we're working with an 8.9 kilowatt hour battery pack. So if we take that whole 8.9 kilowatt hours, assuming that's all usable, multiply it by that 7.4 miles per kilowatt hour, we're getting just over 60 miles of range, technically about 65, but obviously you're going to need a little bit of wiggle room there in order to safely get home. So about 60 miles of range at mixed riding speeds here on the Can-Am Origin. Now, is that going to be a deal breaker for many people looking to do adventure style riding? Absolutely. I know Can-Am knows that. There's no way they're not cognizant of that fact. But are you still able to use this bike as a daily rider if your commute is less than, I'd say comfortably about 50 miles or so? Totally. And if you really felt nervous about it, you could plug into a wall style outlet at work. If you work a whole 8-hour day, you're going to be fully charged up for the ride home. If you have any level 2 charging nearby, you're definitely going to be able to charge up quickly. With that liquid cooling here on the Can-Am Origin, it will charge faster than most other electric motorcycles. And obviously, if you're going to go out and ride dirt or slower speeds, you're going to get much better efficiency figures. So I'm going to be taking this out in the dirt later this week and playing around, and I suspect that I'm going to be able to have an entire day of riding with no problems with the charge figure.
As for the other aspects of the bike, you get the 21 front and 18-inch rear tire, which means that it's a little more resistant to coming over for turning. It's going to be a little more upright, so some people kind of like that stable feeling. The tires were not too bad. You definitely feel a little bit of vibration on the road. I'm sure the pulse is much smoother riding in daily riding situations, but I love being able to sit upright. If I had an iPhone, I'm sure I would love having CarPlay on there, have some Google Maps situation going on and my music playing and everything. So the bike actually has a lot of benefits as a daily rider. You could even put your phone in there. It's not going to wireless charge or anything, but it's got a little USB port. You could run a charger if you want, keep your wallet or something like that. I mean, yes, it's a little expensive, and yes, you can't ride it super far, but if those things are not deal breakers for you, it's actually a pretty darn good little commuter. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Can-Am origin, check the link below. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from DM Moto, and as always, ride on.